You learned it in school. Ancient Greece. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the birthplace of philosophy, democracy, science, the foundation of what we call the Western world. Now imagine someone tells you, none of it was real, not exaggerated, not romanticized, fabricated, invented, that there was no Aristotle, no ancient Athens, no Roman Empire as you were taught it, that the entire ancient past of the West was manufactured on purpose. Only a few centuries ago. And here is the part that's hard to shake once you've heard it. The people who believe this aren't pointing at Greece for the answer. They're pointing at China. At a single lost book so vast, so complete that they claim everything Western science, Western philosophy, the whole idea of a classical past was quietly copied out of it. The book is real. It existed, and most of it has vanished from the face of the earth. Tonight, let's take this claim seriously, all the way to the end, and then let's look at what actually happened. Let's be fair to the theory, because to understand why it spreads, you have to see it at its most convincing. It has a name, the false Western history movement, and it isn't one lonely person on the internet. Over the last decade, it has grown into something organized: books, lectures, conferences, even funding. Its followers include people with academic titles. Its arguments are detailed, confident, and delivered with the certainty of the truly convinced. The core idea goes like this. Before the Renaissance, they say, Europe had almost no real history. No great philosophers, no advanced science, no towering empires. Then over just a few centuries, Europe suddenly produced everything at once, and the believers argue that's impossible. Civilizations don't appear from nothing. So where, they ask, did it all come from? Their answer: it was taken, copied, reverse engineered from the accumulated knowledge of a far older civilization, China, and then disguised. To hide the theft, they claim an entire fake past was constructed. Ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. Beautiful, elaborate, and they insist completely invented. And they'll tell you this isn't just about history. It's about pride, about a civilization that was, they argue, robbed of its rightful place at the center of the human story, and taught to feel small in a world it actually built. That emotional pull matters. It's a big part of why the theory travels so far, so fast. It sounds outrageous, and then they show you their crown jewel. To understand their evidence, you first need to understand the book at the center of it, and this part is completely true. In the year 1408 in Ming Dynasty China, the largest encyclopedia in human history was completed. Its name, the Yongle Dadian, the Yongle Encyclopedia. The numbers are almost hard to believe. Over 22,000 volumes, nearly 400 million characters. It gathered up the contents of 7,000 or 8,000 earlier books: histories, medicine, science, drama, religion, engineering, much of which survives nowhere else on Earth. It was so enormous it was never printed. There was no press in the world that could handle it. It existed as a single handwritten original. To put that in perspective, the Encyclopedia Britannica itself has called it the largest encyclopedia ever made. And China finished it more than 300 years before Britannica's first edition existed. It took over 2,000 scholars' years to compile. Every page was written by hand in careful brushwork and bound into volumes so numerous they filled a room. And because it was never printed, the knowledge inside it was fragile in a way we can barely imagine today. There was no backup. No second press run if those pages were lost. Everything they preserved, thousands of older books that survived nowhere else, would be lost with them. One priceless hand-copied master volume. The sum of a civilization's knowledge resting in a single physical object. And then, it disappeared, not in a fire we can point to, not in a war we can date. It simply slipped out of the historical record, and to this day no one is certain what happened to it. Here is where the believers make their move. And I want you to hear their strongest version, not a weak one. Their argument has two halves. The first is that book, a Chinese super encyclopedia containing the world's knowledge, existing right at the moment European genius supposedly exploded. Too convenient, they say, to be coincidence. The second half is the wordplay, and this is what makes the theory go viral. Take the name Aristotle, they say, break it down. Doesn't it sound like Yongle's total, the total collection of the Yongle Encyclopedia? Take Socrates, sort plus crates, as in sorting and categorizing the encyclopedia's contents. Plato, they claim, comes from total. And Newton's famous line about standing on the shoulders of giants, the giant, they say, was the encyclopedia itself. Laid out quickly, one after another, it lands like a drumbeat. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Newton. Each one, they claim, a Chinese fingerprint hiding in plain sight. For a lot of viewers, this is the exact moment they start to wonder, what if? And that feeling, that little crack of doubt, is the whole engine of this theory. So let's do the one thing the theory can't survive. Let's slow down. You don't need to be a historian to test this. You just need a calendar. Because a theory this big rests on a few specific dates, and the dates don't cooperate. Start with the encyclopedia itself. To steal knowledge from a book, that book has to reach you. So when did the first Chinese books arrive in Britain? The records point to around the year 1600, and the first meaningful Chinese texts reaching British scholars later still. Now hold that next to the theory's own claims. Some believers say Isaac Newton copied his mathematics from this encyclopedia. But Newton published his masterwork in 1687, and by then the original Yongle encyclopedia had already gone missing, lost during the previous century. Sit with that. You're being asked to believe a book was stolen after it had already vanished. The victim of the theft disappeared before the crime. Then there's the wordplay. It only works in English. Yongle's total, sort crates, these are English puns. But the name Aristotle came into English through Latin from the original Greek Aristotles, written down and copied in manuscripts for well over 1,000 years before English even existed as we know it. The resemblance isn't a hidden clue. It's an accident of one modern language run backwards. And here's the quiet problem underneath all of it. The theory leans on the fact that the encyclopedia is lost, that the original vanished, and only about 4% of the copy survives. But think about what that means. They're using a missing book as proof. You can't check it, you can't open it. Its very absence is treated as evidence. A claim you cannot possibly disprove isn't a strong claim. It's an unfalsifiable one, and that's a very different thing.
So let me step out from behind the narration for a moment and tell you what I actually think, because I don't believe a channel should hide behind just asking questions. I think the false history theory is plainly wrong, not offensive wrong, and it collapses for three simple reasons. 1. The timeline is impossible. The core versions of this theory require a book to influence Europe after that book had already disappeared, and require Chinese texts to have shaped a renaissance that was already underway before those texts arrived. Effects don't come before causes. 2. The evidence is a language trick. The name games only work in modern English on names that existed in Greek and Latin for over 1,000 years first. That's not a fingerprint. It's a coincidence you have to squint to see. 3, and most important, it inverts the burden of proof. Real history is a mountain of physical evidence: Greek coins, Roman roads you can still walk on, papyrus fragments, inscriptions in stone across 3 continents, manuscripts that independently agree. To believe it's all fake, you have to believe in a forgery so perfect, so globally coordinated across so many centuries, that it would itself be a greater miracle than the history it's trying to erase. At some point, the conspiracy becomes harder to believe than the truth, and here's what genuinely bothers me about it. It takes something real and astonishing, one of the greatest books ever created by any civilization, and it buries that real wonder under a story that isn't true. China's actual achievement here needs no exaggeration. It's staggering on its own.
But I don't want to end by telling you what to think. I want to end with the part that's genuinely unsolved because it's stranger than any conspiracy. Forget the fake mystery for a moment. There's a real one and it's still open. That original encyclopedia, the priceless, one-of-a-kind master copy, was never found. There is no record of it burning, no record of it being destroyed, no inventory of its loss. One of the largest objects of human knowledge ever assembled simply stopped being mentioned. Some historians think it was buried inside the tomb of the emperor who ordered a copy made, sealed underground, still sitting today unopened beneath a mausoleum outside Beijing that has never been excavated. Think about that. It may still exist, right now, in the dark, the single greatest book ever written, possibly intact. A few meters below a hill that tourists walk past. We don't know. We may never know unless that tomb is one day opened. And maybe that's the real question worth sitting with tonight. Not was history faked, but why a true mystery this haunting, this enormous, wasn't enough for us. Why we reached past the real wonder to invent a fake one. So I'll leave it with you. What do you think happened to the original? And why do stories like the false history theory spread so much faster than the truth? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and the best ones make me rethink my own take. And if you like videos that take a strange idea seriously, follow it all the way down and then come back to solid ground. Subscribe. There's more where this came from.